When I was a teenager, I was on the phone with my boyfriend at the time and hanging out on the computer. The house I lived in at that time had giant windows on the first floor, like 8 foot by 8 foot. I was in one of the rooms with the huge windows, and I had opened the drapes to let some light in. While talking to my boyfriend, I had this super eerie feeling that I was being watched, and I slowly turned around towards the window and saw a man in tattered clothes with sweat dripping off every part of his body, pressed up against my window with his hands cupped over his eyes, and gave me this horrifying smile. I immediately dropped the phone. I was on a phone with a cord. I ran into the next room and grabbed the cordless phone. I told my boyfriend what was happening, and I started crying, trying to remember when all of the doors were locked. The man had to crawl over a few bushes in order to get that close to the window, which made me feel like he didn't have the best intentions. That's when the doorbell started ringing. I poked my head around the corner to see the front door, which was a set of French doors with glass panes, and could see the man trying to get into the house by opening said door. At this point, I'm absolutely freaking out, and my boyfriend tells me to call my mum. My mum answers at work and tells me to hide and call the police. I called the cops crying, and then noticed out of the corner of my eye, from a window in the back of the house, that the man was making circles around my home, looking for a way to get in. The dispatcher told me to get somewhere where he couldn't see me and get a weapon if I felt like it would make me more comfortable. I grabbed a long chef's knife and stood sobbing in a small gap between my back door and a hallway where I couldn't be seen through any windows. Then I remembered that the first floor window was unlocked, and I couldn't see or hear the man anymore. Eventually, I heard a loud rap on my door, and slowly went to investigate. It was a policeman. He asked me to come outside with him, so that he can look in the house and make sure the man didn't find a way in. Right after we get outside, my boyfriend's stepdad pulls into my driveway. My boyfriend had called him to check up on me, as he was out of town, and he lets me sit with him in his car, while the policeman, gun drawn, checks out the house. The cop never found anything. No trace of the guy, no nothing. I was terrified and scared to stay home alone for quite a long time after that. I still freak out when my doorbell rings and I'm not expecting anybody, and I'm terrified that I'll find someone else staring at me through windows whenever I'm alone in a place with ground level windows. A few days later, I found out that someone in my neighbourhood had seen a similar man walking around a neighbour's house about a mile away, and tried to get in the front door when the owner came out and told him to leave. The man bolted away, yelling something about yard work, even though he didn't have a car or any tools and was just wearing rags. Okay, so this is my first time putting a story like this down, but when creepy shit on this level happens to you, somehow you feel compelled to tell others. I guess it all starts with Pokemon Go. It was late at night, and the kids are finally in bed asleep, so I decided that I'd go out to the front and catch this Pokemon that looked cool. I didn't have it yet. It was called Alakazam, which is like a weird yellow psychic type Pokemon. Anyway, it's the middle of winter here and it's freezing, so I wrap up, put on my shoes, and go outside to catch this thing. Now, I don't exactly live in an isolated area. Sure, there's a lot of open bush around us. It's a national park actually, but I live on the main road in and out of a peninsula on the coast. We're like 10 minutes from the beach kind of coast. This is important because there's only one way in and out of that peninsula, where heaps of people live, and it's that well-lit main road I live on. I've lived here for years, and yet every time I go outside at night, I get that electric feeling of danger prickle over me, like something's always behind me, just out of sight. Me, being the foolishly brave person that I am, tell myself it's nothing. No one's there. It's fine. All the while, a little voice in the very back of my head screams at me, "Don't turn around. Don't act like you're scared. Just keep walking, and you'll be safe once you're inside." So, here I am with my phone on full brightness to give me some more light, as if that's going to keep me safe. looking for the Alakazam that's apparently sitting on the curb. Walking slowly and hoping my phone will pick it up before I'm too far away from my front door, it stays just out of my range. I sigh, one of those, oh for fuck's sake kind of sighs, as I walk over to my next door neighbour's driveway where this thing is supposed to be. But what do you know, I get there and it's just a little further, the next house over. I think to myself, should I? I can still see my front door, but I'm finding it harder and harder to shake off that feeling of electricity edging me back to my house. Okay, just this next house, I think to myself. If it's not there, then I'm going back inside. It's too cold for this. This house creeps me out anyway. A weird old lady that doesn't speak but always stares at me lives there. The front yard is thick with overgrown shrubs and weeds. The house needed a coat of paint like 10 years ago. It's creepy in daylight, so now in the darkness, I'm just trying not to even look at it. I take a step toward the property line, and the Alakazam finally pops out. I throw a ball at it, and while I'm watching my phone to see if it's captured or going to pop out again, I hear this noise. A low, throaty growl kind of noise. I don't know how to describe it, other than seriously, blood-chillingly terrifying. My instinct kicked in, and I booked it back to my house, charged up the driveway, and all but dived in my front door before slamming it behind me. I stood frozen on the other side of the door listening. I couldn't quite hear anything. Maybe my fears were just getting the better of me. My partner, who had been quietly messing around with his computer on the lounge, jumped up looking for whatever had freaked me out this badly. When I told him, he thought it was a joke, and asked me if I was serious. Apparently, one look at me confirmed I was not indeed kidding around. "It's probably a cat," he says, "or a possum." Looking down at my phone, I thought, screw it, no more games tonight. So I said to him, let's just go to bed and watch Netflix. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because I was having this really weird dream about someone knocking on my back door, which is right by my bedroom. And then I heard them ringing the bell of the door of my office, which is out back adjacent to my back door. That got my attention enough to wake me up a bit more. I sat up and listened for a moment. Silence. The only sound I could hear was the gentle breathing of my partner beside me. Well, must just be dreaming. Soon as I had laid back down, I heard the knocking on the back wall of my house, and this beautiful voice saying something. I don't know. I was soothed in some way by this beautiful sound, and yet my brain was screaming code red danger. The knocking happened again. A simple knock, 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 and these beautiful and undistinguished words. Let me in, it wanted. I need your help. Hello? Is anyone there? Suddenly, I snapped back to reality and shouted out, no, you're not coming in. You're not welcome here, go away. To my utter astonishment, the knocking stopped. My partner sat bolt upright and asked what the hell was going on. I told him what I had heard, and we sat listening for a while. Silence. In fact, the rest of the night was silent. The next day, I went outside to check the dirt down the side of the house, to see if there was any trace something had been there. Maybe I was just going nuts. Maybe it was just a dream. Nope. There was a muddy handprint smeared onto the side of my house where I thought I heard the knocking. Too big to belong to my kids, too small to be my own. I looked down, and there were footprints, but even stranger, handprints too, like someone had been walking on all fours. By this point, I've walked the whole way around the house, so I figure I'd just go back in via the front door. And who do you think is standing next to her letterbox, staring creepily at me, but the old lady? I just kind of stopped for a second and stared back. I didn't want to turn my back on her for some reason, but she wasn't moving. Eventually, I started walking forward again, and up my front steps, before dashing in my front door. I looked out the door, only to see her still staring at me. Except now she was smiling this super big, toothy smile. I live in a fairly large urban area, albeit in a safer neighbourhood, but I've seen my share of weird. I once had a hobo press his wang into my driver's side window in broad daylight. It left a perfect print, which was fairly hilarious, but I digress. Point is that I'm not easily shaken by pervs or bums, but this story is different. I bartend, so I don't usually get out of work until about 3 AM on weekdays, and while I live in a quiet area nearby, the bar is right on the edge of a really shady part of town. I also live next to and carpool with my bouncer, who is friggin' huge, so I never think twice to stop and get gas or food on the way home. On this particular day, however, my bouncer rode home with another bartender, and we were planning to meet up at my house after they got fast food. I was planning on going straight home, but it was a bitterly cold night, and I was low enough on gas to worry about my gas line freezing again. So, I went to the gas station alone after dark. First mistake. Then, I saw someone from the bar that I really didn't want to see again that night. So I decided to go about another 2 blocks to a different service station. Second, bigger mistake. I pulled up to the first bump I saw, on the far, shadowy side of the lot. As I approached the front door of the store to prepay, I noticed that the only other vehicle there was a beat-up white van on the other side of the pump I was parked at. And I started mentally kicking myself for not pulling to the front of the store. Standing on the sidewalk at the corner of the building was a tall, well-dressed man in his 40s, enjoying a cigarette. I figured this had to be the driver of the van, smoking safely away from the pumps, and that he and the van would probably be gone before I even got back to the pump. I smiled politely, but avoided eye contact, the way you do when you're not up to friendly conversation with a stranger. Nonetheless, when I stepped onto the sidewalk feet from the man, he said in a completely regular voice, "Want to see something funny?" I'd like to say that I had the presence of mind to just keep on walking, but I was born in the country and raised to believe that a normal person simply isn't rude to people, 3 AM or not. So I replied as forwardly as I thought appropriate. "Kinda late to see something funny, man?" He chuckled, as though in agreement, and pointed to the van by my car. "There's a guy in there, wasted. Been there a while. Look, he's drinking a 40 in there now." Relaxing a little, but still attempting to be cautious, I start craning my neck to look at the van. Through the darkness, I can see that the van is pulled about a car's width away from the actual pump, too far to reach with the nozzle. I could see a shadowy figure shifting around in the back, but I couldn't make out much else. This whole thing was just too cliché. White van, 3 AM, shadowy figure. It all gave me the creeps. Well, I hope he sobers up soon. The cops come by here all the time. And with that, I moved a bit closer to the corner. But before I could round it, he said, "Hey, Miss Bartender lady, he's got a flat tire." "Oh yeah? I think so, ain't it?" I really didn't want to go closer to him again, but the tire was on the passenger side, so I had to cross back by the man to see, placing myself between him and the van. I get over there, and sure enough, the tire is gone. Not flat, gone. Like the whole rim had been taken off and was ready to have a donut put back on. I started thinking that this was just too weird. I mean, why would you take your tire off and then climb in the back of your van and have a beer before putting on the spare? I wanted this to end so I could meet my friends, so I started moving quickly back past the man. He put out his hand to stop me. "Is your old man here tonight?" This was when I decided I was really in trouble. The man had watched me pull up, and now he'd been talking to me for a while. He knew I was alone. "No, he's waiting for me at home. It's late. I should go." Does he know how to change a tyre? I think. Do you know how to change a tyre? Well, yeah, but why would I say that? Mistake, mistake, mistake. Well, let's go help him. I don't think... Come on. No. Come on. Where's your southern hospitality? No, it's late. You said he was drunk, I'm tired, and that is scary as fuck. No. At this point, he starts creeping towards me. I can still see movement in the van behind me. I don't want to turn my back in either direction, but I don't want this guy too close to me either. Come on, darling. I won't let anything happen to you. You're very pretty, you know. Manners be damned. I, flat the fuck, sprinted to the window. But when I got there, the attendant was in the store somewhere away from the window, so I started screaming and pounding on it until he came. After a few seconds, he cautiously opened the door and let me inside, where I told him the story and drank a little water. The attendant offered to call the cops and walk me back to my car. I declined the former because I was tired, and I knew it would take an eternity. But I was not going back by myself. The store clerk and I decided that he would call the cops after I left for a suspicious vehicle. But when we got out there, the guy and the van were gone. In 10 minutes tops, they had put on a donut, lowered the van, and driven off. It was popular belief amongst my friends that these guys were human traffickers. I lived not far away from Cleveland, and this was a little after Ariel Castro hung himself, so human trafficking was the hot phrase at the time. But the thing that always got to me, that still gets to me, is some of the things the guy said. I've never seen him before or since, but he knew I was a bartender. He called me Miss Bartender at least once. Even more creepily, he referred to my southern hospitality, even though I have no accent. I was born in the South, but I moved up here before I could even speak. Hey guys, I hope you all enjoyed today's videos. At the minute I am hard at work on my Halloween special, which is going to be a series of 5 videos, each of which will be a mega collaboration with a number of other horror YouTubers. There's going to be YouTubers from across the spectrum, so make sure that you stick around for that in October. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to be back on Monday with the final part of the American Monsters series, so make sure you check that out. And if you've got a story or a creepy experience that you would like featured on this channel, make sure that you send it to me using the email address in the description box. Also make sure that you follow me on the social medias, namely Facebook and Twitter, details of which are also down in the description box. So, until next time, sleep tight.